The formation, history, and modern-day threats of Mount Rainier. Washington. The Cascade Mountains and Mount Rainier didn't always look the way they do today. In fact, everything west of the Cascades, and including them, wasn't always attached to the North American continental plate. From around 250 to 60 million years ago, multiple land masses, known as terranes, attached themselves to the western side of North America. These microplates were subducted under the North American plate and added a considerable amount of landmass, including the predecessor of the Cascade Mountains. Although the final terrain to join the west coast, known as the Silesia terrain, was transported here around 50 million years ago, the formation of the Cascades would still take quite some time. 10 million years after the Silesia terrain formation of the mountain would begin. However, due to erosion, little remains of the past mountain range. Volcanism would kick off again around 10 million years ago, with what we consider the modern cascading arc becoming volcanically active. Even with renewed volcanic activity, the ancestral Mount Rainier took shape only some 2 million years ago from the subduction of the Juan de Fuca plate under the North American plate, which channeled magma underground and into the Cascades, fueling the growth of Mount Rainier and other volcanoes. However, this wasn't the only source in the region, as magma from past subductions formed volcanic rocks underground. One such rock was the Tatoosh granodiorite, which formed around 18 million years ago when large volumes of magma rose beneath the surface and slowly cooled. These rocks would have remained hidden underground if not for erosion mechanically exfoliating them to the surface. Some parts of Mount Rainier itself formed on these ancient volcanic rocks. After its predecessor, the Mount Rainier that we know today would finally begin to form only 500,000 years ago, and has been considered an active volcano ever since. Through dating of ash and cooled volcanic rock, it has been determined that the mountain's last lava flow erupted around 2,200 years ago, and its last pyroclastic eruption occurred only 1,000 years ago. The mountain itself hasn't had any recorded activity ever since. However, some accounts from the 19th century report seeing black smoke being released near the mountain's top. Mount Rainier wasn't always known as what we call it today. In fact, the surrounding Native American tribes have many different names for the mountain, and the mountain itself was very important to their mythologies and way of life. Although there is probably many, many more who draw a connection to the mountain, a few tribes that lived in the surrounding area of Mount Rainier were the Cowlitz, Nisqually, Muckleshoot, Puyallup, Squaxin, Yakima, and Coast Salish. It isn't known when or how long these people lived here. However, archaeological evidence shows that upwards of 15,000 years ago, people lived within and around the then snow-packed valleys. The earliest artifacts connected to Native American tribes on the mountain were dated to around 4,000 years ago, indicating that the local tribes, or their predecessors, had lived in the area for a very long time. Each of these tribes has had its own name for the mountain, with some of those being Tahoma, Tacoma, Tacoma, Tacobet, Tacoma, Ticobed, Tacobed, Ticomen, Nitsalip, Shwawa, Onapami Tahoma, and others. Today, it is still officially called Rainier, named after a member of the British military, of which was given by British explorer George Vancouver in the late 1700s. Many modern indigenous movements have been pushing for the mountain to be restored to its name, Tahoma or Tacoma, which is the most commonly known and recognized indigenous name and has been a common root for many of the other names. Although there isn't much record of it, native tribes in the area most likely experienced multiple eruptions from the mountain during the thousands of years they inhabited the land. Even today, Mount Rainier still remains extremely dangerous. Mount Rainier, along with multiple other mountains in the Cascade Range, are currently viewed as a high to very high threat for potential eruption. Because of its location to many metropolitan areas, Mount Rainier is seen as the most threatening mountain in all of the Cascades. In the event of an eruption, the near surrounding area of the mountain is at high risk of lava flow, while towns/cities that have glacial rivers running through them are at high risk of experiencing lahars. The entire area downwind of Mount Rainier would also be subject to ash and tephra fragments falling through the air. The small fragments could cause respiratory issues if inhaled, and the larger ones pose a risk of starting fires wherever they land. Lava flows pose some risk to local communities, but what they can produce is much more dangerous. In the event of an eruption, the released lava will melt surrounding glaciers, which will then flow outward, mixing with debris and incorporating even more water. This is known as a debris flow, or more commonly, a lahar. Lahars are by far the most dangerous potential output of the mountain, due to their long range for destruction and for the fact that they can be caused by eruptions, glacial outburst floods, earthquakes, or from collapse of unstable portions of the mountain. These lahars can travel tens of kilometers away from the mountain and at speeds of hundreds of kilometers per hour, making them nearly impossible to escape. The lahars would predictably follow topographic features, such as rivers fed by glacial melting and valleys. During the lahar, debris would destroy everything in their path as they flowed downward, while there being no way to stop them. Fortunately for us, volcanoes typically produce warning signs days to months before they erupt. Although these signs would go unseen to the average person, the mountain is constantly being monitored by sensitive instruments for signs of an impending interruption. Despite this advanced technology, volcanic eruption times and the extent of a possible eruption are extremely unpredictable, and because of this, extensive community planning in areas of high risk is crucial for minimizing damage of a potential eruption. As of now, Mount Rainier is still viewed as a great risk of eruption. Because the mountain is still being fueled by the subduction of the Juan de Fuca plate, experts say that it could happen any day now, or it could occur thousands of years in the future. Whether we see the eruption within our lives or not, it is almost guaranteed that Rainier has an eruption in store, and whoever inhabits the land from now to the distant future must be ready for it.